When you check into a hotel and you present your ID, do you ever think that you're giving away far more personal information than necessary? The hotel only wants to prove your identity, but now they also know your age, weight, home address, driver's license number, and more. As soon as you hand it over, you lose control. We're often asked to give away too much of our private data. Once it's out of your hands, that information can become susceptible to hacking, the sale of your personal data, or a barrage of unwanted ads. But what if there was an option to verify your personal information without giving away unnecessary, critical, private details? Verifiable credentials, a pillar of Web 5, solves this. There are digital certificates of claims that are easily shared in a private and secure way. They can prove your legal name, age, ownership of an asset, or anything really. Verifiable credentials limit the amount of data you share to only what's required, and they can't be tampered with or faked. Let's reimagine how identification could work. With Web 5, the government issues a verifiable credential that proves your identity and lives in what we call an identity wallet. So now when you check into the hotel, you present the front desk with a verifiable credential and share only what the hotel needs. This establishes that you are who you say you are, without giving away more personal information than you'd like. Verifiable credentials make proving claims easier, more private, and more secure.
Hello, happy Friday, everyone. If it's your first time tuning in, I feel like I say this every week, but if it is your first time tuning in, you're watching TBD TV, and this is a weekly Friday live stream where I chat with different SSI experts out there so we can learn more about the ecosystem and how things work. So today we're chatting with Doc Labs, which I'm really excited about. And what we're going to go through today is basically talking about the guest. We'll talk a little bit about what Doc does. We'll see a demo, and we'll also leave room for Q&A, so definitely feel free to type in the chat and interact with us. There was a question there for the audience, for folks who want to respond. You might be in Discord and we can't see your messages, so I'm going to check there as well. But I believe the question was, what's your favorite holiday? And I'm going to put that question to Elina and Richard as well. I know y'all said no faves. I have that question and another one right after to maybe balance it out. So yeah, what's y'all favorite holiday?
Yeah, that's fine. That's an easy one. I think for me, hi everybody, happy to be here and thanks for having us. My favorite holiday is actually New Year's. So my family's originally from Ukraine, and we're in the former Soviet Union, and New Year's is a really big holiday there. It's kind of just like very celebratory, and we actually spend it with our family. And so we all get together. When we're younger, everyone would just like sleep over in the same house, and the kids, kind of be all over the living room, and we give presents and eat a ton of traditional food. And so we've actually kind of kept that tradition growing up. So
that's so fun. Presents for New Year's. I want that.
Yeah.
What about you, Richard?
It's hard to pick a favorite, probably. But the time for me between Christmas and New Year's, I usually take off work. It's my wedding anniversary. I was very wise to make sure my wife's birthday, Christmas, and wedding anniversary are all at the same time. So I just have to remember one thing. But families together. I got a big family, and usually I take a bunch of them. We go do some cross country skiing, spend an overnighter in the mountains, that kind of thing. I'm in Utah, so there's a lot of places to play. I love getting up in the mountains in the winter and just having lots of fun.
Yeah, you like live in like a winter wonderland type of area. Perfect. Alina, you were gonna say something? My bad.
Oh, no, I wasn't.
Cool, cool. All right, and then my other question to even it out, and I asked this question a long time ago to one guest, but I never asked it again. Do y'all prefer ebooks or like physical books to read? And do you even consider like, well, I'll just leave it at that. Ebooks or physical books?
You want to go first on this one, Richard?
Yeah, I definitely prefer a physical book. Most of my reading is with a kid on the couch next to me, so there's not a lot of time that. And if there's a device, it's too distracting. They always want to do something else. But sitting out with a quality graphic novel, reading a story with the kids is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm actually very much in the ebook Kindle camp. I think my husband, we were dating. He's like, "Here, try my Kindle," and I think ever since then I was a convert because I think it makes it so easy just to pick up whatever you're reading. I love where you can like download a sample and see if you like it before you buy it. You can look up words or there's like a thesaurus. So I'm very much in the ebook camp for me personally, but I totally respect physical books as well.
Either way, you're consuming some kind of content, so it works either way. All right. So I really want to, before I get into like asking you all who you are and all that, I do want to give the audience a chance to learn about our KCC hackathon that we're having right now. So I'm going to play a quick video and then we'll come back to just asking about like who our guests are, what they do, and what Doc is.
Imagine a world where your customers can transact across payment apps without the hassle of repeated identity verification checks. Try it out for yourself in the Known Customer Credential Challenge. Step 1. Become an issuer by using the Web5 SDK to create a decentralized identifier in a decentralized web node. Step 2. Issue Alice a known customer credential confirming you've already verified her identity. She can now transact with you without repeated verification. Step 3. Store Alice's credential in her decentralized web node, allowing her to securely present it from any TBDEX-enabled payment app. With $5,000 in prizes up for grabs, now's the perfect time to showcase your skills. Submit your entry by November 4th for a chance to win big. Ready to get started? Visit bit.ly/KCC-challenge to learn more and join the hackathon. Happy hacking!
Okay, cool. So hope y'all are excited about that and got a chance to grab the link. If not, like just hop in our Discord and ask us. But let's get into the meat of the conversation. Elina, so I was like looking at your LinkedIn and I realized, oh, I didn't know you were the co-founder of Remote. I don't know if it's called remote.com or just Remote, but I didn't realize you were the co-founder of that as well. And I'm just curious, like what led you from Remote to Doc and like what sparked that interest in SSI for you?
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So I helped co-found Remote back in 2016. It was kind of its first iteration of it, and eventually the current CTO kind of came in and turned into what it is today. But at the time, and Doc actually came out of that as a project. So at the time, this was like 2016. This was before COVID, obviously, before the world, knew what remote work really even meant in a lot of ways. And we were trying to build out kind of a future of work platform where people who wanted to find remote work could do that. And at the time, actually, one of our investors was like, "Hey, have you guys heard about blockchain? Seems like there's really interesting use cases." And one of the challenges we had really been struggling with is when somebody joined the marketplace, they need to fill out a profile, obviously. And, who owns most of our like online work data today? It's usually LinkedIn or, others. And so we just kept seeing this issue of how do you get people to have, verified data about themselves that could be trusted, and how that could really prevent people from finding opportunities for themselves. And so we went down the rabbit hole of learning about blockchain and learning about SSI, and just got really excited about like what could be done and what could be enabled for people by using this technology to enable data, that we create for ourselves to be shared and owned and used to find things like job opportunities, but also lots of other opportunities as well. So
Interesting.
Doc, started, and so Doc was spun out essentially as its own project, and I went with that.
Wow. What about you, Richard? For you, I think your career maybe has looked more obvious on paper that you're like into SSI. I'm curious, like, what was that moment that SSI made sense for you?
Yeah, I was trained as a software engineer in college and found open source and just thought this is amazing. It bridges the digital divide. It gives us, equalizes people's participation online. And I worked for a couple of different open source companies, and then I found this local company in Utah that was doing SSI, and joined them. They're fairly early startup, Evernym, and just that idea that we can use these tools to make it so that we are acting as equals on the internet, that the companies aren't privileged over us, that we can interact with each other, that governments can interact with citizens, that we can preserve privacy and simplify. Like I see it as a way to this is going to sound really big, but it preserves democracy. It creates the world my kids are going to live in. Like, how do we have an influence that's far beyond, getting people to click on ads? So it's just a lot of fun. It's fun to work on emerging technology. There's a lot of components, a lot of pieces to it that are interesting, and to see it solve problems that impact real world, real life scenarios that our parents, our non-technical friends can understand.
I agree with you on like working on emerging technology. It does feel fun because it's like people haven't thought of this yet, or people have thought of this, but people haven't adopted this yet. And I'm like at the cutting edge of something that could eventually really change the world. Okay. So I think you kind of talked a little bit about Doc for us, Lena, but I'm curious, either of you, how would you describe Doc to a 5-year-old? This might maybe a hard question, but yeah.
You want me
Either one.
Sorry, Richard. I'll try my best, Richard. You can jump in if you have ideas. But I was thinking about this because I have an almost 5-year-old. But I think how I describe it is you have information about yourself that's important to you, right? You have your name, your age, your favorite color, your birthday. And imagine every time you wanted to go do something, you had to tell everybody all this information about you. And versus say we wanted to go buy ice cream, and all they need to know is your favorite ice cream, instead of having to say, here's my name, my birthday, da, 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 da. All you have to tell them is that one thing, and everything else stays with you and is yours. So that was, so what we do is we enable that change to happen, where you get to keep all your special information private to you.
I like that description. That was good. Richard, do you have anything to add?
I can't improve on that description of the 5-year-old, but usually I have that conversation with the kid, and then my relative says, yeah, but you're just bringing about the end times as you put everything on a phone and the government controls everything. And I say, hold up. The whole point of what we're doing is that we make it so that the government can't control everything. And so Google and Facebook can't control everything. It's yours on your phone, and only the people you share it with can see it. And sure, there's a root of trust. The credential comes from an authority like the government, but the way you use it is yours. And I find that's a really important point to make with certain relatives of mine.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I do think some people get scared and they're like, well, like, who's getting access to data? It's like, only you. You're the only one. I actually, when you talked, I have a follow-up question that's not on here, so I hope it's not too surprising. But like, I'm curious what y'all think of like our industry putting everything digital. Do you think that like that leaves out certain people out of the conversation, maybe people who don't necessarily have access to like devices, or maybe they don't have like that digital literacy? Sorry, threw that at y'all.
You want to go first, Elina?
Either way, I mean, I do think, it's definitely a concern. It's, it's crazy because we are so insulated in our, in our bubbles, especially working in tech, but there are, people where just basic access to technology is still a challenge. And it's not a challenge that we're working on directly. But I do know that there's kind of different efforts on how to potentially address it, whether, and Richard, you might know the examples better, but I think, it's not like we do see some, printing maybe a QR code on a piece of paper, something like that. Or I think, I don't know if I'm remembering correctly, but with Bhutan, I think they actually gave out some sort of devices, the government did, like very basic devices to their citizens and trained them on how to use it. And that was how they distributed their digital government credentials. So,
Yeah. It is an industry, we need to be very cautious about, accessibility for refugees, children, the elderly, people with disabilities. How do we make sure that this identity is available to everybody? Because it should be a human right to have an official identity. At Doc, we're very concerned about how do we get companies to benefit from this today with their existing use cases. And so we're largely in Europe, we're largely in North America, and we recognize we want to contribute to standards that make it available to everybody, but we don't want to let that accessibility question get in the way of getting work done today, because that's what's going to fund these future efforts. Now, that said, I've worked on a project for refugees in Southeast Asia where the refugee camp administrator had to be able to manage on behalf of the refugee, and then they had to be able to take that credential with them when they left. We managed that through a biometric that worked pretty well. And I actually was working this week consulting with a group in South Africa. 30% of the population have feature phones, not smartphones. And so the question is, can we do this via SMS? Yeah, you can do credentials via SMS. Like, there's a lot of the other solution they had was, but if we can tie the credential to a biometric and store that in a privacy preserving encrypted end-to-end way, then we can just have a kiosk at the verifier's place. And then I see my face and I can approve. Yes, I want to use this, share this with the verifier. So there are a lot of ways to address that concern based on the specific use case. It's definitely an important one, but the technology works, which is pretty exciting. And the question is, what are the user interactions that are appropriate for that specific use case?
Love it. Love those answers. Thank you. People have asked me that before, and I've always been like, I'm not sure what they like. Good question, but like you all said, I don't think it should stop it. But I never thought of those other situations where, like, I think Elina talked about Bhutan, and then you talked about using SMS and stuff like that for verification. So that's really interesting. Okay, and now, Elina, you did talk about a little bit about what led to the creation of Doc, but do you want to expand on that a little bit more?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I shared a bit about kind of how I think, the idea was coming out of how do we essentially get around these data silos that, traditional tech has established where all our data is locked in. It's not really owned. We were starting Doc, it was just slightly before GDPR went into effect. So just even the idea of like individual data ownership was still pretty new, especially for people in the US. And so we got really excited about kind of what we could do with it. We decided to have a token sale. And so to really kind of bring in, wider community behind the effort. And we initially were going to build on Ethereum, like many blockchain companies at the time. We had a white paper, we had a vision, and then I was like, okay, how do we actually make this happen? And so we went on kind of, the first several years were really just kind of understanding, okay, how can we actually build this infrastructure and what's needed in terms of a blockchain to support the technology. So that was our first couple of years. We ended up building out in Polkadot, built a substrate chain, which is actually we're going to be migrating that to Checked very soon. That was a recent announcement we made. Yeah, is that we're going to be kind of joining forces with Checked and merging our networks. And then in addition to that, though, is, so we had the blockchain infrastructure all built out, and then we started speaking to companies. And like Richard mentioned, we think, adoption needs to come from traditional organizations in the place. It's, we need to work with them with where they're at today. And the overwhelming feedback we got was, if you want us to use this, we don't want to hear about blockchain. We don't want to hear about crypto. We're not in Web3. So we very, very quickly understood how important it was for them to make this really easy and accessible to use. I think we might have.
Sorry.
No worries.
I've really been having Wi-Fi problems for like the last couple of weeks. Sorry, guys.
No worries.
I heard like dang it. I forgot what you said, but keep going.
Yeah. No, it's all good. It's all good. I was just saying that we pretty much, spoke to, companies that, more kind of traditional Web 2, and very quickly understood how important it is for them to have this be really easy, really familiar, abstract all the complexity, make it as easy to adopt as possible for them. So that really led us to building out a SaaS platform, which is where our focus is today, is, all the tooling, storage solutions, kind of everything that these companies need to adopt this technology into their existing, processes and platforms, and, have it make sense for them.
Interesting. I love it. And it's exciting to hear that y'all are merging on your networks with Checked as well. And okay, I'm curious. I kind of want to move to the demo soon. I'm curious if you all would mind describing like a typical customer journey that like someone would use for like docs, like verification or KYC solutions, and then like let's jump into a demo.
Well, as Elina said, that focus is on traditional companies trying to get their work done.
Yeah.
And what we explain to companies is the point of this technology is for a place where a big database isn't going to work. I'm moving customer data with my business partners. I've got multiple subsidiaries with their own employee databases. I have different regulatory environments for different data, so I can't put them in the same database. In those scenarios where being able to put that credential on the edge, being able to give it to the user, is really valuable. And so your user's going to come and you're going to onboard them with their government credential. We can check your MDL in North America. We can check your European Union PID, personal identification document, or you can do a traditional IDV process. Take a picture of your passport. Whatever you do will help you get that data in, and then you did make your decision about what information you want to share in a credential, and you can issue that credential. You can put it on the edge on the device. You can put it in a cloud wallet, or there's different scenarios where you can hold that data, and then the user has to give their approval for that data to be accessed. So then they go to the verifier. The verifier says, hey, we want to onboard you as a new customer. We want to check that you are indeed a credentialed doctor at this place. We want to check that you are authorized that you have the right insurance for this load you're carrying, like whatever the credential is, we can verify that. That's the general flow. We focus a lot on that integration with your existing system. We focus a lot on making sure it's tied to the holder with a biometric, so that it can't be their spouse, it can't be their child, it's definitely them in front of the device. Making sure that they can do account recovery, get the credentials back if they lose their device. And we make sure that it's all a SaaS service, so that it's really easy to integrate with the REST API. You don't have to deploy anything. We always keep you up to date on standards. Those are the kind of things we make really easy for these businesses.
That's really cool. Are you ready for me to take a look at the demo? Right.
So this is our standard demo, and we're showing one of these user journeys. It's a financial use case, and you've got your credit union, Quotient Credit Union. They're going to onboard a customer. They traditionally have checked that customer's identity, the KYC credential, with their KYC provider. We made up a brand here called Identity Clarity. And here Identity Clarity is saying, look, Quotient, your users can share their credential with anybody in the Clarity Partners ecosystem, in the Identity Clarity's list of relying parties. And so we've got a few different groups in this ecosystem. Now, Doc has a user interface that we use for administration purposes called certs. So this is that certs. And in here, you can set up your schemas, the credentials you're going to issue. You can design a PDF document that goes along with the credential. It makes it easier for the holder to see what's going on. And you can define the different organizations, and you pull all these together into an ecosystem. So you can define your governance framework. What is the brand that's going to be associated with this credential? So holders get used to who can they share their data with. And you list those participants, and you come in and say, what schemas can they issue? What schemas can they verify? So here's the biometric provider. They can only do biometric stuff. They can't do the bank credential. And then you can decide what schemas are involved and who can verify what. So that's how you set it up in the system. Of course, you can do all this via an API, but a lot of the time it's easier to learn and get things set up, maintain it in the UI, and then automate with the API. So we're going to start by creating a new bank account. So I'm a customer. I've gone to Quotient Credit Union, and on the right you can see I've got my phone shared in a screen share, and this is your traditional IDV process. I'm a new bank customer. I'm going to upload my government ID. I'm going to take a photo. Now this is all what the bank's currently doing. We're not interfering with this. But then when we submit our application, our account's been open. This is great. You can get some extra benefits, a new bank customer, by downloading our mobile app and taking a picture. Now the app, in this example, it's an identity wallet, a traditional identity wallet. Most of our customers will embed this inside of the bank's app, so that you don't have to install another app. You're just gonna scan the QR code. Associate your bank app with your new credentials. So we're gonna scan the QR code to make that association. And now it's going to tie this to my biometrics. So I've got to share my thumbprint. And of course, we hide the thumbprint retrieval. The operating system does that. And now it says, are you willing to share your thumbprint with the bank? Now, this isn't sharing the actual thumbprint. It's sharing an anonymization of the thumbprint. But we're going to go ahead and do that. And you can pick.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with that. When you say an anonymization of the thumbprint, what do you mean?
So I showed this biometric ID. So this isn't my actual thumbprint. This is just an identifier that the biometric provider uses to tie to my thumbprint.
Gotcha.
Okay. So my biometric never leaves the device.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's actually really nice because it means that the biometric provider, they can get rid of their centralized database because they can keep all of the biometric templates on the device as well as signed credentials. And that can be very powerful for biometric providers as they start to operate in jurisdictions that are stricter about that biometric data being shared. So here it says I've received those credentials. So I received from the biometric provider an enrollment credential. This one actually has that my biometric in it, but it ties it to that ID that goes to the issuer and verifier. So as a biometric provider now, I don't have to keep the biometric template on my centralized service. It's there on the edge. I can request it when I need it. And then I have the check that says, biometric provider for sure has checked that in the last 2 minutes that I do in fact have a thumbprint that matches this ID. And then Quotient Bank, they've issued me you're a customer credential with some, the information they track, including my bank identity number, my bank account number, and this binder that says, and we checked this biometric ID. So now the verifier can say, well, if you can't produce the same ID, then I'm not going to trust you because you're not the same person. And you can see this is used as part of the ecosystem. It's using a special capability we've developed called ecosystem bound, where this credential, and going back to that administrative interface, this credential's got a price assigned. And so now the issuer can be paid, the bank can be paid when people use this credential, or the biometric provider can be paid when the credential gets used. But if for that payment to work, it can only be used within the ecosystem. So the encryption fails if you try to use a credential outside of the ecosystem. And it supports selective disclosure. So I can share, my name without sharing my bank account number, for instance. So, that advanced. And then we have a third issuer who gave us a credential as part of the same interaction. You'll notice I only scanned one QR code. But the third issuer, they're the credit union, they're the credit score, the credit agency, and they've issued me a credit score. And that one's also part of the ecosystem bound. So and you can see who issued it, and it's part of that same ecosystem. And I can go in and I can learn more about, who is this ecosystem, what is an ecosystem. So then I can, as a consumer, I can get a sense of, oh yes. So other places that say they'll take a Clarity Partners credential, I can use that, and they're going to be bound by the terms of Clarity Partners. Equity Clarity is going to check that they're managing the privacy policy correctly, those kind of things. So that's how the ecosystem works. That's how the credential works. Now let's actually do something worthwhile. So I'm going to, let's go back to the credit union, and let's enter some car information. Let's try and get a car loan. I don't want to fill out this whole form. I don't want to log in. I don't want to dig out my password. Let's just scan the QR code. And because this information comes as a verified credential, I can get instant approval. And so do you have to prove it's mine? So let's share my thumbprint. Now the thumbprint stays on the device, but now it's saying we're going to share that bank credential. We're going to share that biometric check, a new one I just got, and we're going to share that credit score. So I share those 3 credentials, and I can decide what information I want to share. In this case, it's mostly required. It's just easier to hit select all for a demo. And I can review, make sure I have everything. And look, I'm not sharing the actual credit score. I'm just sharing it's over 700. So I can do like a range proof, preserve some privacy there. So we're going to share that over. And now I don't have to fill out the form. I just get these green check boxes everywhere I got a little ahead of it. Takes another 5 seconds. My demo environment.
It did it.
I've got the green check boxes. So this is all verified information, auto-filled. And now I get that instant approval. And one of the best parts about credentials is that the data is valid when you check it. Because
Wait, so sorry.
Yeah,
so in real life, it would be approved that quickly. You wouldn't have to wait back and forth.
Yeah. Credentials are, depending on the kind of information you're sharing, there can be a delay, and there's always internet stuff. But yeah, I mean, 5-10 seconds. And the best part is because that information is verified, it's valid. A lot of the times you can skip manual underwriting. So instead of it going to some queue and you hearing back in 2 days that a human looked at it, you can automate processes that traditionally you couldn't automate. So that 5-second wait isn't necessarily a big deal when it's saving you, however long to go through the manual process. Any other questions, Roselle?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
good So one of the best parts about credentials, though, is that when you check them, they're valid because the issuer can revoke at any point in time.
Okay.
So this view is the credit agency. An employee of the credit agency seeing a dashboard. Now in real life, this would all be automated, but an automated process doesn't demo very well. So, I've come in and I've checked the history, and this person hasn't been paying their loans on time. So I need to revoke their credential and issue them a new one with a lower credit score. So of course that can be completely automated. But in this case, we've gone ahead and issued that new credential. And now as we go back to, we see that new credential just got pushed to my wallet. I didn't have to do anything as a holder to get that new credential. And it's got that lower credit score. And as I come back and look at the old one, it doesn't refresh till I go look at it. But now it's checked and it sees, this credential is revoked. Now there's some blockchain magic that makes that happen. But it's privacy preserving, and this credential can't be used anymore. And the last step that I'll show in the demo today is to show that, we were able to use the credentials with the credit union that gave them to us. We were able to show the revocation, but we can also use this at a different service, a partner of Equity Clarity or Clarinet or Identity Clarity, to be able to do a loan a rental application. So again, I come in, I don't want to fill out this whole form. There might be some data that's not in my credential I have to type in, but let's scan the QR code. Again, we need a current biometric when I make sure that you're still the same person holding the device. So I share that thumbprint, and then I don't need a credit score here. I'm just going to share the bank account information. So we go ahead and do all that and share that it is in fact me doing it. And then it fills in. And depending on, that one was fairly instantaneous. So depending on how the internet rolls that moment, it can go pretty quick. And now I'm all submitted. And,
Wow.
I've been approved to get my loan.
It's faster than what would happen in real life. So even the delay from the internet is fine for me.
Yeah, and as a user, it saves me all that typing over and over. Is the landlord or the rental agency? I know this data is valid. I don't have to go back and check. I might need to pay to check that bank credential, like we showed. It's a paid credential. I'll get billed later for that verification. But I've automated something that traditionally was very hard to automate, because where do you get the information? Tying to every centralized database is just not practical, and it's not secure. But if I can get it directly from the applicant, then I've got that information. I know it came from somebody I trust because it came from my KYC vendor. It came from an issuer the KYC vendor trusts, and I can move forward.
Awesome. This was so cool. All right. I have questions, but I want to make sure the audience gets a chance to ask you questions. But before that, I'll play a little video so that people can get to thinking about their questions, and then I'll bring those questions up really quickly. Cool. So I hope y'all are excited to participate in Hacktoberfest. But we do have a question that came in from Gerald, who is watching on Discord. And he asked, can users actually download and use doc-issued credentials outside of the platform?
So your audience are pretty technical. They know how software works. So I can give a fairly nuanced answer. The short answer is that we support open standards. So we have three different credential formats. One is standard JWTs. They're meant for broad adoption and interoperability. So if you pick that credential standard, it should be, we've tested, it can be issued to wallets besides ours, and it can be verified by verifiers besides us. We also have one that's more targeted at privacy, and it uses some newer capabilities that aren't part of the standard. So uses BBS cryptography, things like that are going to be standards. They're in the standards process. But if you use that, somebody will have to use our open source libraries or target those emerging standards to consume them. But in principle, it could be used outside of our platform. And then we have that monetizable credential, ecosystem bound credential. That cryptography prevents it from being used outside of our platform in order to ensure that people get paid the way they expect. So it depends on your credential variant. Now, the nuanced answer is these are all brand new standards. In practice, interoperability is really hard. People are always changing. The standards are still evolving. And so whenever somebody tries to do this in practice, there's usually a bug that has to be fixed. There's a tweak we have to make or something like that. But we are trying, we are testing with other platforms. We're currently implementing support for the European Union digital identity standards. And so that'll be part of a bigger ecosystem where there'll be some interoperability as well.
I'm so excited and jealous of Europe to see how that comes about, and it's cool that you all are involved in that part. Are you by any chance involved in anything with like the DMV or anything? I'm just being nosy and curious. In terms of like mobile driver's license or no?
Yeah, so we can verify driver's licenses that are issued with the MDL standard, the ISO 18013 spec.
Yeah.
The trick now is this is brand new. In fact, you're the first to hear it. We haven't announced it to our customers yet.
Ooh.
We just finished support for the MDLs. Now the trick is we've got to test it for each state we're targeting. So the expectations will be able to do that. But we're Elina's California one, we've got a hurdle we got to fix before it's going to work. My Utah one, I haven't got working yet. We got to start making sure that MDL is funny because the standards they use, the MDL standard only got ratified like this week. The -7 standard is barely ready. The exchange protocol is OpenID. That one is in implementer's draft, so that one's not ratified yet. Everybody's interpreting a little differently. So there's still a bunch of work that everybody has to do there.
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh, that's exciting. Exclusive. We did have a comment. It's not a question, but someone said, love the use case of filling out apps for underwriting are always no fun. Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely
about that. And then I had a question myself around the concept of credential monetization. I know you demonstrated that, but I think I'm just not really familiar with the concept. Like, why is it important for businesses? Is this just to keep businesses like have them have some type of incentive for having a credential? I don't know.
Yeah, the challenge in the market today, it takes a lot of effort to produce quality data. And so who's going to pay you to do that? If you're a government, you're collecting taxes is kind of your job. That makes a lot of sense. If you're a university, you might be paid by the students to give them a degree, and producing a credential as part of that is a value add to that student. That might make sense. But if you're a KYC vendor, your existing business is to have somebody pay every time they check. And if we want quality KYC credentials, we can't ask them to, who's going to pay for that? How does that business get done? The holder doesn't get the benefit. They're only doing a KYC check because somebody else is demanding it. They don't want to pay for it. But the verifier that's demanding the KYC check, how do they pay for it? Well, the way you do that today is you find out information about the holder and you share it with the issuer, and the issuer tracks everything that goes on. That's not the world we like to live in. So we've developed this privacy preserving way that the issuer finds out a credential that I gave for using this schema got verified, but the issuer doesn't know who the holder was. They know who the verifier was because they might have a contract specific with that verifier, but they don't find out who the holder was. Now, the challenge then is the issuer says, well, how do I know that I'm actually getting paid every time it gets used? And that's where being able to say, well, the cryptography fails. Like mathematically, it's impossible for the credential to tell the difference between a forged credential and a valid credential unless you got reported. That gives the issuer enough confidence for them to move forward, even without finding out who the holder was.
That was a very clear explanation to me. Thank you. And that makes sense. Like that the KYC company would need that to continue, whereas the other companies, like maybe a school or whatever, that's part of what they're promising in the first place. And then some other questions. I think you had mentioned this a little bit, but you were like, there's some technical like cryptography going on in the background. I don't know if I'm like throwing you out, but like, how does your system really handle like revocation, expiration, and updating credentials? Because I think you like showed it, but like you were like, yeah, there's just some cryptography going on in the background. Just curious, like on the technical.
Yeah, I'm always happy to go into technical details. I often bore people because I do it too fast. But as I mentioned, we have those different credential formats. The standard format that's used as a standard JWT credential. It uses the W3C, or is it a diff? It's a W3, the W3C status list 2023 standard. And so what happens is you have to put somewhere, we put it on a blockchain, a bit field, and you trigger something on or off. And then if you use that, when the credential gets checked, is the credential says, look in this spot to find out if I'm still valid. And so that can be, it's pretty privacy preserving. If you have a large group of credentials, it can be, it's not perfect, but it works pretty well. And it's a standard. Lots of people support it. If you pick our more privacy preserving variants, either the BBS approach or the ecosystem bound approach, then what we're putting on the blockchain instead is what's called an accumulator, which it's a mathematical construct. Ooh. Where you can test whether a credential is in it or not. So the credential tells you, look at this accumulator, and then you do a bunch of math, and it says I'm there or I'm not. And if I'm not, then it's not valid. If I am there, then it's valid. And that is mathematically privacy preserving. The verifier, the relying party, can't learn anything about the credential unless they're in the exchange. No third party can learn about the revocation status or about the credential unless they're in the actual exchange.
Interesting. I think TBD also uses status list as well. And then another question I had is, like, I think you showed financial use cases, right? Like, I mean, maybe not all, but like the apartment getting confirmed for a loan for that and different things. I'm curious if there's, no, let me finish my question first. But I'm curious if there's any examples or other use cases that Doc has been used for that are not necessarily financial related. And then there's a comment in the chat that I'll highlight after.
Sure. Yeah. I can jump in on this one. There's a lot of use cases that Doc could be used for, and some we can talk about. So one is Richard mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned, but we have a company that we work with in South Africa, for example, where they're using Doc's credentials to verify workers when they come to the job site. So they have a big problem with workers faking credentials, which is a huge safety issue and a liability issue. And so they're using Doc to verify that the workers are who they say they are when they show up, that they're actually skilled, they've taken the training, that they have the skills required. So that's one example. We work with customers more in the education space. So kind of education credentials, being able to share those more widely. We have someone working in kind of insurance space as well for trades. So there's a number of use cases that Doc's being used for. We do focus a lot on, if you haven't picked this up already, on what we call identity service providers. So these are more traditional companies who are providing identity services, so KYC or maybe biometric checks, and enabling them to integrate this technology into their current platforms, and then be able to service their customers with it. And a lot of customers are in finance, just because that's where a lot of the there's more regulation, more needs for KYC, but other types of companies as well.
That's pretty cool that you all are across the board for more identity than just like in financial tech. There's a follow-up question from Gerald saying, like, does Doc use bitstring status list to prevent phone home problem? Sounds like it. I'm not familiar with the phone home problem, so.
Yeah. One other thought, I'll answer that. One other thought, use case I really like is a healthcare use case where who is this patient? Have they seen a doctor in our network before? What's the ID we use to get their medical chart? That kind of thing.
That would be helpful for whenever somehow they always lose my immunization records, or if I switch a doctor's office. Okay. Exactly. Now this question.
So the phone home problem is that traditionally, the way the verifier knows to trust something is they go ask the issuer, hey, let's have a conversation around Rizal and all of her personal data. Okay. And so the issuer can track everything Rizal does. So that phone home is it's not good for privacy, but it's how things are done today without credentials.
Gotcha.
And when you do that revocation, the question is, hey, issuer, tell me, is Roselle's credentials still valid? I have to phone home to find that out.
Gotcha.
So the person is exactly right. By putting that bit string, that status list on a blockchain or some other third-party site, it allows the verifier to see what's valid without having to tell the issuer. So the issuer could host that on a website, or a third party could host that. We like a blockchain because then there's nobody monitoring. Like the chain isn't collecting information from who's accessing it. And so that's what we see as the most privacy preserving way to do it.
Cool. I missed some of it, but cool. I heard the part of what the phone home problem is, and I'll just go ahead and rewatch. So sorry about the connectivity issues. There's also another question that I'm not fully understanding all of it, but maybe we could try together. Instant Clip says how gambling companies create bank accounts with fake identities. I don't know if they're I guess they're maybe not feeling positive around KYC from the comments. Any response to that?
Well, the questioner is exactly right in that today, lots of KYC is fraudulent. That's a major problem that KYC vendors are worried about. And the challenge is, how, especially in this era, they talk about, using documents from poor people. That definitely happens. But what's the emerging threat is that they use completely artificially generated documents, deep fake documents that look like they're how do you tell the difference? You load the camera and you share the picture, and the picture can be generated. It can be a completely synthetic person. That's a major threat in the financial ecosystems today.
Yeah.
That's where credentials are so valuable. The credential got issued to a human.
Yeah.
We can check the biometric when it gets issued. And so, and then it's issued using a signature from the issuer.
Yeah.
So that signature can't be forged. No one except for the issuer has the private key needed to issue the credential. And so we do see it as a fundamentally better way to do KYC. If you get it from a credential, you completely sidestep that whole question about fraud and synthetic identities and things. You're getting it from a KYC issuer. Now, another huge benefit of verifiable credentials is that once you've received that identity, you can track that identity not across verifiers, but a single verifier can say, oh, what reputation do I have? As I see you over time, I can have more trust that you are who you say you are. So if you can share 3 different credentials that say who you are, that's even more trusted than if it's just one. Or if I've seen you over the period of a year or 2, that's a very high bar for somebody to be faking. That's a very long game, a very long con. So in those ways, credentials change the problem to make them more reliable.
Yeah. And Elina, you had something to add?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, Richard, it's also where biometrics can come into play as well. So being able to actually tie the credential to a biometric that, could be, maybe it's a fingerprint, maybe it's a little bit more than what can be faked by an AI.
Yeah, I agree with what you all are saying, especially on the credentials front, not necessarily for KYC, but I see a lot of companies doing things like content credentials and stuff like that to combat any AI generated things. So I do think it's a promising outlook for us. I think if I'm not seeing any other questions come in, I have one more for you all, but before that, I'll just play a quick quiz for the audience. I'm crossing my fingers that my Wi-Fi doesn't mess up again. So let's just make sure. Let's hope for that. But I'm gonna go ahead and play that. Y'all can respond in the comments below, and then we'll come back to the question and we'll wrap up. Okay, that was a quick quiz. My last question to you all was just about Doc being open source. I noticed that like you all have some of your SDKs are open source, and I'm curious why you chose to open source parts of Doc. I love open source, so I'm always excited to talk about that.
Yeah, when I joined Doc, portions of it were already open source. Elina, why'd you make that call?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it wasn't even really a big decision for us. We kind of felt like we're working on blockchain, working on decentralized tech. We understand that for adoption to happen, for interop to happen, all the, and we were building on open source technology ourselves. So for us, I think it wasn't really even a big decision. It was just, I think in order for this to be successful, we felt like this is what we wanted to do. We didn't want to take the path of like more traditional tech. We do have some stuff that's closed source because that's kind of where our business is built, but all of that is leveraging the open source technology that's underneath.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah, open source is the way to go, especially if you're leveraging open source technology and you're building solutions for people. It's almost like, why not bring them in to like helping build that solution? Richard, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I think that's where ties back to that first question. Like our identity is so fundamental to who we are and how we interact in the world. Like the credentials, we're eventually going to have credentials that outlive us as humans. And technology is not very good at lasting 100 years.
True.
And having that open source core, that having these formats be standards, having the technology that reads and writes them be available, publicly available, is very important for these identities to be meaningful over the long term. So we make a pretty clean line. If it involves writing the credential, reading the credential, storing the credential, those kind of things, we make sure there's an open source SDK for. Mm-hmm. But when we're running the service at scale for the enterprises, I don't think people are too worried about our Amazon configs anyway. So that's where we're investing in our SaaS service. That we don't worry about contributing that back.
That makes sense. Thank you. All right. So now I'm going to pivot to a different segment of our conversation. It has nothing to do with tech. I literally just ask you all like silly questions and then we end the stream. Basically, I'm going to say a statement. It might be like pineapple belongs on pizza. It doesn't mean I believe it. And you do like a thumbs down or a thumbs up. You can respond if you want. Okay. My first question is, it's okay to keep your holiday or your whatever holiday decorations, right, for December up past February. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
That's February.
I don't care. Well, people do whatever they want to do.
Okay, I'm lazy. Sometimes I still have mine up and people are like, what's going on, Rizal? Get it together. Okay. Listening to an audiobook is not reading. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Sorry, listening to an audiobook is not reading. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs down. So you guys consider it reading. Good. And then other question is, I'd rather go to a movie theater than watch a movie at home. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Any you want to expand or that's it?
I always fall asleep in movie theaters, so we rarely go. And we have, comfortable couch and snacks and everything at home. So
might as well just stay home. And there's a comment in the chat. Let me see what it is. Oh, it's about KYC. Someone was saying just KYC in banking will be more effective when credit worthiness is directly proportional to amounts of credited to someone's account. Okay. Yep. Fair. All right. Anything you all want to say or share, like any links before we completely wrap for the rest of the live stream?
Thanks for inviting us. Anybody who's interested, if you go to doc.io, there's a free trial, try for free button in the top right hand corner. And you do that, you get a month to play with the system. It's all SaaS, you don't have to install anything. And of course, our GitHub Doc Network is our GitHub org. Scott, you can play with all the code there.
All right. So just to repeat, Y'all have doc.io if you want to do the trial for a month. And then there's github.com/doc network. If you want to look at the SDKs, contribute, just read the code just for fun. That's what's there for you. All right. I want to thank y'all so much for coming on the live stream with me, dealing with my little technical issues, and just sharing your knowledge. I found it really, really interesting. Oh, thank you, Instaclips, for saying best web series. That's great. Thank you. And also thanks to the audience as well for staying engaged, asking really great questions. Appreciate y'all and have a great Friday. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
you.
Thank you.